So you're going to be launching in cold weather. What are some tips and tricks that will make your launch successful? That's what I'm going to cover today in this video.
Welcome to Advanced Construction Videos, where we show you how to tackle rocketry, building techniques, and more. On our website, we sell kits, motors, building supplies, and electronics. So come and learn, shop, build, and fly when you visit us at apogeerockets.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Milligan from Apogee Components. Today I'm going to go over some of the tips and the tricks that I have used over the years when launching in cold weather. Now, sometimes you just have no choice but to launch in cold weather. For example, in some parts of the country, they don't have launch fields that are readily available in the summertime because the crops are in the ground and the farmers don't want people trampling their crops. So they have to wait until the weather gets colder and the crops are out of the ground so they can start launching. Other areas of the country, they just have no open fields, but they do have lakes. And in the wintertime, the lakes freeze over. And there are a number of clubs around the country, particularly in the northern latitudes, that will launch on those lakes when they freeze over. So there are some advantages, but there are some disadvantages. The cold weather just makes it hard. When it gets cold and windy, that's even harder. And when it gets windy, I typically just say, I'm not going to launch. But if it's cold and calm, yeah, you can launch. Now, there are a lot of tips that people have given over the years, and I'm going to go over some of those. And the first one is about plastic parachutes. And everybody knows this tip. Plastic parachutes like the one in here, and when the weather gets cold, they get stiff, and they just don't want to open properly. So the tip in that one is to powder your parachutes. Here I've got a sock, and what I've actually done is filled it up with baby powder. And I've had this sock since my daughters were young. In fact, it's one of their socks from when they were kids. You can see it's just dripping powder, and basically you can take this and just tamp on the plastic. You want to do both sides to get powder on it, and not too much powder, but just enough. And the sock gives you just enough. In fact, this is probably too much. The other thing you want to check on rockets is the shock cord. This one has a rubber shock cord. And rubber can get kind of stiff too, and stiff and brittle. So again, you want to test everything before you get out to the field. A good rule of thumb is to keep everything in your car before you actually use it. Not in the trunk, in the car, because it's warmer in the car than it is in the trunk. On this particular rocket, it has a Kevlar shock cord. So a Kevlar shock cord, you don't really have to worry about it in cold weather. That's the advantage of Kevlar. You also do have to be aware that in cold weather, plastic can get kind of brittle. So this plastic is kind of flexible right now. But in cold weather, it might want to chip. So it'll fly just fine, but beware that when you're walking around with it, and I've seen kids in schools, they're all holding their rockets like this, because they're cold, and they bump into things and they'll chip a fin. So just be careful of plastic fins. It's not that you can't use them, you just have to be careful of them. My next tip is batteries. So if you've got a launch controller, just the typical small controller, and it has AA batteries in it. These batteries rely on a chemical reaction, and when the weather gets cold, it slows down that chemical reaction, so the batteries will seem weak. So what you want to do is to keep them warm. So you'll just stick them in your pocket so that your heat of the body will keep them warm. Also, when you're not using them, keep them in the car. Again, not in the trunk, in the car. There are some batteries that are better. Those are the lithium-ion batteries, but they're a lot more expensive than the alkaline batteries. So just keep them warm, and I think you'll probably be okay. Another thing is masking tape. You know, we all use masking tape in rocketry, and in the wintertime though, that adhesive on the tape can get kind of stiff too. So again, this is another item that you want to keep in the car just to keep it so that the adhesive stays tacky on you. Speaking of rocket motors, now rocket motors will work when it's cold. We have two kinds here. We have the S-disc black powder motors, and then we have composite motors, and this one's made by Quest and Aerotech. Now the black powder motors, you have to be a little bit more careful with. Because they have a paper case and paper can suck in water, when it freezes, that water will expand, and what it does is it expands the case away from the propellant. And then when it warms up again, you're going to have a gap between the paper and the propellant. And whenever you have a gap, it means there's more surface area exposed. And that's what causes rockets to malfunction. We don't want that. So again, keep these motors stable. You know, don't allow them to be temperature cycled to extremes. So if you're storing them in a hot, humid area, and then you take them out in the cold and they freeze, that could lead to some problems. Composite motors don't have that problem because the propellant is rubbery and it will expand and contract with the temperature swings. But you do need to be aware that the propellant is going to be cold, and you have to heat that propellant up with the igniter to get it ignited. So when you're putting the igniter in, you know, make sure that it's definitely in contact with the propellant. And I have a video on installing igniters, and the trick I recommend is install the igniters with the motor pointing up so that you have gravity assisting you in making sure the igniter goes all the way in and touches the propellant. And it's the same with composite propellants too. You know, you got your motor here, drop it in and make sure it goes all the way in and touches the bottom before you put in the plug to hold it in. Okay. Also in cold weather, you might break something, and so you're going to need to fix it on the field. And your adhesive of choice here is super glue. Again, super glue is going to need a chemical reaction to cure, so you're definitely going to need the accelerator to go with it in cold weather. Again, keep the super glue in your car to keep it warm because you don't want it to get cold, because now you need more energy to get that chemical reaction started to make it cure. This is going to help, and it's going to help on the surface, but to get deep down, especially if you're using a lot, you know, it's not going to, you know, you're going to craze the surface, and the surface will feel hard, but underneath it's still soft. So again, when you use super glue or any type of adhesive, make sure it's nice and warm. I probably wouldn't use 5-minute epoxy in the winter time on the field, because the cold weather is, you're just going to need so much energy to get that to kick off. Okay, if there's snow on the ground, make sure you have a little whisk broom, just, you know, to get that snow off of anything. You know, because snow can be deceptive because it is water, and water and electricity, you know, don't mix. So, you know, if your igniter clips get water or snow on them, you want to brush that off to make sure that you don't have anything that's going to conduct electricity. Basically, keeping everything warm is a good strategy in the wintertime, and that includes your own body. So my last tips is how to stay warm when you're on the launch field. First of all, you're going to wear gloves. And if you have gloves, you know, with the fingertips cut off, those can be really helpful, especially when you're putting in igniters on the launch field. I like to wear rubber gloves underneath my regular gloves because these are, you know, basically skin tight anyway. So it doesn't really affect the gloves that you put on over the top. But when you pull the gloves off, What this does is it keeps the moisture in your skin from getting out to the air where the wind can evaporate that moisture. And that's what gets your hands really cold, is when they're wet. So if you can keep the water on your skin from evaporating, and the gloves will do that, these rubber gloves, that will keep your hands warmer longer. Also, your feet. I have problems in the wintertime. It's just my feet just feel cold all the time. So make sure you have good thick insulation between the ground and your feet. And so you're going to need thick boots. And if you don't have thick boots, at least take out something like a rubber mat that you can stand on to keep your feet isolated from the ground. And if you don't have a rubber mat, just even cardboard, if you break down a box and bring that with you and standing on that, that's going to help a lot. Also, keep your legs warm. Most of the time when we go out flying rockets, we're just wearing like blue jeans, but there's really no insulation value in that. So I like to wear ski pants in the wintertime to keep my legs insulated and warm. If your legs are warm and your feet are warm, your whole body feels warm. And then also in the wintertime, especially if there's snow on the ground, make sure you wear sunscreen, because you're going to get reflected sunlight off the snow and bouncing up onto your skin. So actually you have twice as much sun energy hitting you as you normally have in the spring or summer. Okay. I think that's about it. Other than that, just stay hydrated. In the wintertime, you probably don't drink as much as you should, but stay hydrated out there. And if you have any other questions or comments, be sure to let us know. We'll probably answer those for you. Again, my name is Tim Van Milligan. This is the Apogee Rocketry Workshop. May the winds be light, may the skies be blue, and may all your rockets fly straight and true.